Hello everyone and welcome to Werven's World and welcome to my How to Play Space Hulk Death Angel. Space Hulk Death Angel is a card game based on the board game Space Hulk, and it's about a couple of Terminators from the Warhammer 40k universe from Games Workshop walking through a Space Hulk. And the Space Hulk is a collection of a lot of ships that are kind of mangled together, that are just floating through the universe, and this ship is full of alien scum that needs to be purged. So even though these Terminators are very, very good at killing aliens, the aliens are also very, very good at killing them. So this is a cooperative card game for 1 to 6 players where you kind of walk or traverse the Space Hulk, trying not to get killed by all these aliens while going for a certain goal. So before we go into how to play the game, let's look at how to set it up. Because of course, if you don't have Tabletop Simulator and just have the card game, you have to set up everything yourself. So let's look into how to do that. So let's look first into the components. So when you open the box, you will be greeted by a lot of different cards and some tokens, as well as a die and a rulebook. So what are all these cards? Well, first of all, we have the event cards. After every round, you draw one of these and you see what happens and where new aliens spawn, but we'll go into that later. We have terrain cards that kind of like specify exactly where in the Space Hulk you are, and it might have some additional actions that you can do. There's the setup cards that basically dictate how you should set up your levels. There's the Gene Stealer cards that contain all the aliens that will be out there killing you. There's the Brute Lords, which are kind of like the boss aliens. Then there are the actual location cards. For example, here you can see if you play with 3 or 6 players, you need location 1A, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see here there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that will be your game cards that you will be using, but I'll go into that later. Then we've got our Space Marine groups or Terminator groups. So there's 2 different types of cards for those. First of all, there are the actual Terminators from that group. So they always consist of 2 Terminators, and those will be actually in the Space Hulk. Then you have corresponding action cards for that group, and those always consist of 3 different action types. You have the attack card, the move and activate card, and the support card. And each different group of Terminators has those, but they all have specific extra abilities attached to that card. Then we have the dice, and this is a very, very mean dice. It tends to kill you more often than that you try to kill aliens. It's very, very mean. You'll learn to hate this. And then you'll have the support tokens, which, well, I'll get into what they do. All right, let's look how to set up the game. Basically, first we need to decide with how many players we're playing. As you can see here, it's a setup for 1 player, is 6 Space Marines, setup for 2 or 4 or 5 or 3 or 6. So let's say we're playing with 1 person. We're playing this solo. Then we will have to set up a location deck that will basically dictate what the Space Hulk itself will look like. And that will require us to have location deck set up 2, 3, and 4. If we go to these here, you can see 2, 3, and 4. We shuffle these, and then we put 4 on the bottom, 3 on top of that, and 2 on top of that. And then we just make a deck out of that with this one on top. That will be our Space Hulk that we will be traversing throughout the game. Then we have to make blip piles, and blip piles basically just contain a lot of these Gene Stealers, and we will need to make a deck out of that. And in the first location, there will be 6 coming from the left and 6 coming from the right. So what we do is we basically, let me get rid of these cards, is we basically just make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a deck of 6 cards, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a deck of 6 cards. Here we go. Now we need to choose our Space Marines. So basically what we can do is we can have 6 Space Marines, which means that we have 3 different colors of 2 Space Marines each. So we can just take a random amount of colors. So let's say we take the yellow ones and the red ones and the blue ones. Here we go. So these are all consist of 2 cards. So we can shuffle these, and then the first 3, or yeah, the first 3 in this case, but if you play, for example, with 8 Space Marines, the first 4, it's basically the first half of the Space Marines you have, they will face leftwards. So you just flip the card and flip them so that they look towards the left. And then we put these ones to the right. And then we've done that. So let's get rid of these cards here. Oh. There we go. There you go. And then we get the action cards related to these colors. So we get the yellow action cards, we get the orange action cards, and we get the blue action cards. The rest we can basically just get rid of. So let's just delete them here. Don't delete them if you have the actual game, of course. So we can also get rid of these. We've done that. And now we need to set up what the corridor itself looks like. As you can see here, there's these icons. This one here, and these two. And this one means that the lengthy corridor is 2 from the bottom. So if we find the lengthy corridor, this one is 2 from the bottom. So that's 1, 2. It's basically where this Space Marine is. Then the ventilation shaft, ventilation duct, is 3 from the bottom. So that's where Brother Claudio is next to. Then we have the corner, which is 3 from the top. 1, 2, 3. And then we have this door, which is 1 from the top. And now there's basically only one thing left to do. We need to spawn some of these gene stealers to make it for an interesting start of the game. To do that, we will turn over the first event card and we will look at this symbol here. We will see a yellow icon here, which means that we spawn 2 gene stealers, and a white icon, which means that we spawn 1 gene stealer. And that differs depending on with how many Marines you have. For example, here, if you have 12 Space Marines, you would spawn 5 and 3. So that would be much more gene stealers on the board. So then we will spawn them on the corresponding terrain tiles. As you can see here, a yellow icon is on the 2-barred yellow like bar thing, which is the door. As you can see here, that's the corresponding icon. So we spawn 2 gene stealers on the yellow thing, and the door is on the left, so we take it from the left blip pile. So we turn over 2 gene stealers that are now coming at the door to attack Brother Goriel. So then we have these red bars here, which correspond to the ventilation duct, but that means that we only spawn 1 gene stealer, and we will spawn that on the ventilation duct. We ignore all the rest of the information on this card and basically just discard it, and then we are ready to play. So how does the game work? The game itself is distinguished into 4 different phases. There is the choose action card phase, where basically we choose for each group of Space Marines what they want to do out of one of the 3 cards that they have. Then in the resolve action phase, we will resolve all these actions. Then the gene stealers can attack, and then we go through a new event phase where new gene stealers can spawn and something bad or good can happen. And then we will choose actions again. So there's 4 phases: choose action, do action, gene stealer attacks, and then the event phase. Sometimes there will be another phase, which is the travel phase, and that happens when we run out of gene stealers. We basically go through to the next level of the Space Hulk. So let's look at these actions. Let's first look at the basic actions. As you can see, this card is an attack card, we have a move and activate card, and a support card. And each group of Marines has exactly those cards. Let's start with attack. Attack is very easy to do. Basically, if you have a Marine that will attack, so basically let's say yellow would play attack, then both of yellow Marines could attack. And they can either attack ones that are adjacent to them or the ones that are in range. As you can see, for example, Brother Valencio has a range 2 attack, which means he can attack range 0, range 1, and range 2. So he could actually attack these. However, he is facing to the left, and that means he cannot attack this one. Even though it's within range, he is facing the wrong way. Attacking works the following. Let's say we are resolving this one, then I can choose in which order to do that. But let's say Brother Goriel starts first. He can basically just roll 1 dice. And if there is a skull on that dice, then 1 gene stealer dies. It's as easy as that. Then this one would attack. And again a skull, and I kill the gene stealer, which means this thing is now free. Hooray! Awesome, so that is how attacking works. That's very, very easy. So the same would happen if Brother Valencio would attack this one actually. It's just 1 dice. It's always 1 dice, except for some exceptions that are on the cards themselves. So now he would have killed one of these things. That's how attack works. Then we can look at the move and activate card. So each group of Marines also has that one. And basically it means that you can do any or all of these things. You can move, which means that if the blue ones did this, they could move. So if I would move this one here, that means they basically just switch positions. So, and then this one could move here. However, let's say blue had been here, and then he would have moved. Let's say he wanted to switch position with this guy. Now he would be flanked by this Gene Stealer because it's in the back. During a move action, you can also change facing. So you can either move and change facing, or just change facing. It's completely up to you. And then you can also activate something. And activate only comes into work with some terrain tiles. For example, these have nothing of use for activation. However, as you can see here, this door, place one support token on this card. When traveling, the current player may first slay one Gene Stealer in the formation for each token on this card. Because basically the Gene Stealers, as you keep traveling through the Space Hulk, they remain, they keep chasing you, and they kind of, well, they will start grouping up, and there's a lot of Gene Stealers, which get very dangerous. So you can actually place support tokens on this. Every time you activate it, you can place one support token. And then once you change locations, you can spend these support tokens to kill some Gene Stealers automatically. And there's other location things that have different activation rules. For example, your artifact, place this card in your hand. You may discard this card after one of your defending Space Marines rolls a die to make the attack miss. So basically, activation means that you activate a terrain card and you just read what it says on there, and that will basically tell you what to do. Lastly, we have the support actions. Again, each group of Marines has a support action, and when you resolve a support action, you will take a support token and you can place that on any Marine, not even just your own, you can just place it on any Marine, and that allows you to re-roll a dice or to force the aliens to re-roll a dice. So let's say Brother Dano wanted to kill this one, but unfortunately he didn't manage. I'm not sure how to, well, here we go. Now he missed because there's no skull. And then I don't want that because it's very dangerous to have this one here. Then I could spend this support token to re-roll this and then hopefully roll a skull, which I did now, and then this one is dead. You can also force the Gene Stealers to re-roll, but we'll go into that later when I've explained how the Gene Stealers attack. Now, all of this sounds very, very basic, and to a certain degree it is, but what makes this interesting is that all of these cards, they do something very specific, plus if one round, let's say orange took this one, blue took this one, and yellow took this one, then the next round they can only choose from these cards, and then for example they would use this one, and that one, and then the next round they would have access to these again. So basically each round, except for the first, you only have a choice between two actions. So if you attacked one round, you cannot attack with the same Marines again the next round. So that offers some very, very interesting choices. But let's look at some of these cards. They kind of speak for themselves, but let's look at some of these too, so you can kind of get an idea of how this game works. For example, we have Full Auto, which is a very specific card for the orange team. It's that Brother Leon may attack up to 3 times instead of just 1. So what we then would have is that Brother Valencio could attack once at range 2, and then Brother Leon could attack 3 times up to a range of 3. So this guy can kill a lot of Gene Stealers in one turn, up to a maximum of 3, of course. But that's actually quite a lot. But for example here, this guy, Brother Claudio, is very much different. He has Heroic Charge. Instead of attacking with him, you may slay up to 3 Gene Stealers within one range of him, ignoring facing, so even behind him, and then you roll a die. If it's a 0, then he dies. So it's a very risky thing to do, but it can save you in a very, very difficult situation. As you notice, these cards always refer to one Marine. That doesn't mean that the other Marine cannot attack, but he just does his normal 1 dice attack at a range of 2, for example. There's always one Marine in these situations that does something specific. Then we have support. So let's look at counterattack, for example. Each time Sergeant Lorenzo, which is this guy here, each time he rolls a skull while defending, the attack misses and slay one of the attacking gene stealers. If the swarm still contains a gene stealer, it attacks again. So basically, if the gene stealers attack and they roll a skull, then he actually kind of counterattacks and he kills one of the gene stealers, which is kind of nice. So that's how support things work. Of course, you also get that support token. This is just kind of an extra thing that you can do, and it's completely different between different colored teams. Then we have to move and activate. For example, here, the Onwards Brothers. Each time one of your Space Marines activates a door, you may place one additional support token on the terrain card. That means that these orange guys are actually really nice to have close by a door because they can pump a lot of support tokens into the door to later kill a lot of gene stealers. Let's see if we have another one. Here, your Space Marines may move to any position in the formation instead of just to adjacent positions, so they can kind of just like teleport through the formation. When everybody played their action cards, let's say these have been played, they are actually resolved in a certain order, and that is determined by the number on the card. So first we would do Defensive Stance because that has a 2, then we would do Onward Brothers because that's a 7, and then we would do Lead by Example because that's a 13. Alright, let's look at attacking. So all the gene stealers will basically attack your Marines. However, they do not do so individually. You roll once per swarm, which is basically a group of gene stealers in one location, and then basically we go through them. Let's say this one attacks Brother Dano, so they always attack the Marine next to them. We roll a dice, it's a 5, and that means Brother Dano is safe, because how it works is you compare the result that you rolled with how many gene stealers are in the swarm. In this case it's 1. So if I would have rolled a 1 or a 0, because it's equal to or less than the amount of gene stealers, then this guy would just die. So if I would have rolled a 0, this one would just be out of the game, these ones would shift up, and then we would continue the game. But I lost a Marine for the rest of the game. So you can see how deadly it gets, especially the more gene stealers you get, because of course the chance to roll a 0 or 1 is not that high. Now that we have 2 gene stealers here, I can either roll a 0, 1 or 2 and this guy would die. If there's 3 gene stealers, it would be 0, 1, 2 or 3. So the more gene stealers, the more deadly combat is, and that's very, very dangerous. Now let's get back to the support tokens. Let's say this gene stealer would have rolled a 0, then I could force them to reroll by spending a support token. Only the Marine that is attacked can spend that support token, and then they would just have to reroll, and now they rolled a 0 again, so it didn't help and I die. These support tokens are limited in their use, however, because let's say I would be flanked, which means that I would be looking the other way, then the only thing that would happen when gene stealers attack me is that I cannot force them to reroll. I cannot use support tokens against gene stealers that are flanking me. So make sure you're facing the right way, not only to be able to attack them, but also to be able to save yourself in a pickle as long as you don't roll 00. After all the gene stealers have attacked, we go into the event phase, and it basically just means we turn over another event, and this is a gun jam, and we look through what it does. Choose a combat team that did not reveal an attack action this round. Next round, that combat team may not play an attack action card. So yeah, suddenly you are not allowed to play certain cards that you have, which is quite annoying actually. So then we actually spawn new gene stealers. So we look again, so we have yellow, which means spawn 2 gene stealers on the door because that's the same icon. So we would spawn 2 from the left. So now there's 4 gene stealers here already. And then we would spawn 1 on the red, which is this one. So then we actually start moving the gene stealers, and gene stealers move as a swarm. As you can see here, this icon, we look for that in the gene stealers. So these ones have it, and that means that they move upwards. You always check the side of the Marine that they're against, and then you see which side they move towards using these arrows. So that means that both of these move. So then we look at the other group of gene stealers, and you can see that there's 2 gene stealers here that have the correct icon. So they would move to the bottom. However, the way this works is that this is a group, and whenever at least one of the gene stealers in the group has the correct icon, then all of them will move. So now all of these will move one down according to the arrow here. So now we've done the movement, and then we basically start all over again. So we choose the actions we want to do, then we do the actions, then the gene stealers attack, and then we turn over a new event card. However, that type of movement only happens when you find this kind of icon with the arrows up and down. There's also another icon that you can find, although it's a bit less common, which is the flanking maneuver. And this flanking maneuver is kind of like this arrow that you can see, and then the icon of the gene stealers. So let's see what would happen if we would have drawn this card. Well, here are none of those gene stealers, but here is one that has these paws. So that would mean that this entire group would then switch positions. They would all go here. They would all kind of jump to the back of this guy. If this group was already in the back, then they wouldn't move at all. Alright, now you basically know how to play the game, except for one very important rule, and that is travel. If at the end of any phase one of these blip piles is empty, then you will travel at the end of that phase. So let's say I would have an event phase, and that required me to spawn 4 gene stealers on the right part here. Then we would do that, 1, 2, and let's say 3, 4. Then we would resolve the movement of the gene stealers because the phase hasn't ended yet. And then it's the end of the event phase. And then we would travel because this blip pile is empty. This one is still full, but that doesn't matter. As long as one of them is empty, you move. What you do during a move is a couple of things. First of all, let's look at the door. Activate. Place 1 support token on this card. When traveling, the current player may first lay 1 gene stealer in the formation for each token on this card. So let's say there were 3. Then we could remove 3 gene stealers. For example, we could get rid of some of these because they're very, very dangerous. So that's 1, 2, and then maybe one of these. Here we go. Then these all just die. And then we've done the door special ability. Then we go to the new location. So we turn this over, and as you can see, we have to do a couple of things. First of all, we have to set up the new terrain cards. We have a door at location 3, we have a corner at location 1, we have a ventilation duct at location 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have a long corridor at location 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what this does is it changes where the gene stealers can spawn. In some levels you actually have some more interesting terrain tiles, for example a Promethean tank that you can blow up to kill all the gene stealers there with the risk of killing your own Space Marine as well. So there's quite some cool terrain cards as well that do funny things. So now that we've set up all the locations, we're almost done with the traveling. We still have to set up the new blip pile. And as you can see here, there will be 6 on the left, 6 on the right. However, the left pile wasn't empty yet. That doesn't matter. We just get rid of it. We put it on a discard pile and we will make 2 new stacks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here we go. Get rid of these tokens. Now we have new blip piles, and then we are done. Except here is a upon entering thing, and you also need to do that. The current player must choose a Space Marine with 0 support tokens. If able, spawn 1 gene stealer behind a chosen Space Marine. So first of all, we need to get rid of 1 support token. This one has one, so we get rid of it. Now, the funny part is we just made these blip piles. So if I could, for example, now, let's say I want to spawn 1 behind, I don't know, Brother Goriel. Here we go. Then we already have 1 less card in here. So that sometimes brings some strategy in it, where you have some abilities that allow you to reshuffle stuff into a certain pile and stuff. And you kind of want to get through 1 deck really quickly, because then that means you can get rid of all the other ones for free because they just go to the discard pile. But now we are in a new location. The phase ends, and in this case we traveled during the event phase, so that means we go to the choose card phase. So now that you know how to play the game, let's look at how to win the game. Let's say you beat all the location cards and now you are at location 4. Then there's always a win condition there. Sometimes you need to spawn a Brute Lord, which is a very, very powerful alien that is terribly hard to beat. But other times, for example in this one, you have a launch control room. So you can see in the terrain on the left here that we have to put a control panel 3 from the top. So let's do that. This is the control panel. 1, 2, 3. And the control panel says when you activate it, use the current locations card, activate control panel ability, and that ability is described here. Place a support token on this card or roll a die. If the roll is equal or less than the number of support tokens on this card, Space Marine win. So you need to move and activate, then you put a support token there, and then the next person that activates it can try to roll a die. If it is less to the amount of support tokens here, then you win. So you might actually have to put a lot of support tokens there, which will take you a lot of time, which gives the Gene Stealers more time to kill you. And basically that's how you can try to win the game. You lose the game by losing all your Space Marines. Another way to win the game is if you're already at the last location, you manage to kind of kill all Gene Stealers on the board, as well as all the Gene Stealers in the blip pile. So basically there's no way of getting more aliens. Even if then you didn't fulfill the objective, it doesn't matter because at least you purged all the alien scum. Alright, so that is Space Hulk Death Angel. It's a very fun, quite short cooperative game. It also plays very well solo because you don't have that many things that you have to think about because you have only 3 cards per group. So that makes 9 cards that you can choose from, and most of the time is actually 6 cards because you cannot choose the cards that you used last time. So you don't really get overwhelmed with 6 Space Marines only. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. I hope you now understand how to play this game, and see you next time.